a production of the South Carolina Educational Television Network.
Steel, the primary building material for modern society. Life as we know it would be impossible without it. Man was able to progress only after he gained a practical, working knowledge of metals. This knowledge lifted him from the crude developments of the Stone Age through the Age of Bronze and into the production of iron. And from the fiery furnace came the future. Today we would like to look at the man whose dreams and accomplishments not only created one of the first ironworks in the Carolinas, but he also helped create a nation from 13 fledgling colonies. We are here on Nanny's Mountain in York County, South Carolina, standing on an extremely rich vein of iron ore. Even today, with the outcropping rocks, you can chip them away and find extremely rich iron right on the surface. 200 years ago, these trenches were extremely active for many years. In 1780, they were one of the most active iron mines in the eastern seaboard, and indeed in what is now the state of South Carolina. Men would chip away at the rocks all day long, pile them in carts, and take them 1.5 miles away to the furnace and the foundry, where the iron would be made into useful objects for the farm and for the home. We would like to tell you today about the man who made all of this possible. You won't find his name in the history books, and I doubt if you find his descendants on the board of U.S. Steel. But in his way, he contributed tremendously to the growth of first the colony and then the state of South Carolina. A tremendous patriot, a wonderful gentleman. His name is William Hill. William Hill was born in Ireland in 1737. His early years are still lost in the mists of history. We know that he and his family emigrated to the colonies, and that later on he married Miss Jane McCall. We know that he bought 5,000 acres of land here in the new acquisition, including this mountain. Now, did he buy the land and discover the iron, or did he know that the iron ore was here? This is yet to be determined. However, there is a record that in 1760, this area had a mineral survey, and that the amount of gold and iron was dutifully recorded. William Hill was a tremendous man. He was the owner of the property. He built the furnace, the foundry, and the forge, which were based on Allison Creek, 1.5 miles away. This is Allison Creek, part of the 5,000 acres purchased by William Hill in 1762. It's a very beautiful, peaceful spot. He came to the frontier, cleared the land for his home and his ironworks, and here he left us a tremendous heritage of courage and independence. Allison Creek is wider and deeper now than it was when William Hill bought it due to the backup waters from Lake Wylie. But it still remains a very beautiful spot. It's hard for us to imagine today the tremendous effort that it took to create the ironworks and the farm or plantation. It's known that William Hill employed the men of the area with their carts to help with bringing the ore down from Nanny's Mountain, and also for the creation of the various types of manufacturing he had here. We know that his home was across the creek in that general direction, and considering that he employed 92 slaves, we must realize that somewhere there had to be fields and pastures so that the food used by the entire group of people working here could be raised, because we were far, far from what they would then call civilization. William Hill developed, first of all, the furnace in which the iron ore was melted and the rock taken away so that the hot iron was released into the proper containers. From there, it was either cast into cannon or large pots or whatever. Others were made into bar iron, which were later reheated in the foundry and again cast or shaped at will. Smaller pieces were sent to the forge, or as you and I would call it today, the blacksmith shop. There was also a nail manufactory here, because nails were extremely important in the building of everything that had to be created in this part of the upstate Carolina. Along with this, he had sawmills to provide the wood needed for the various buildings, and we know that he also had grist mills for the grinding of wheat and corn for the use of people. This was indeed a village, and Isaac Hayne came to see the installation, was tremendously impressed by what William Hill had created here, and the two gentlemen went into partnership. William Hill working here at the ironworks and across the creek on the plantation, and Isaac Hayne went to Charleston, from which he would sell the items which came down river. Because after the goods were made, they were sent by cart to Camden, a 6-day trip, 3 days each way, and then down the river to Charleston, where Hayne was the salesman for the works there. Now, if you notice, the cannon and the cannonballs were a very large item in the manufacturing done here, and to me it's extremely interesting that all of that was highly illegal, because the British had passed the Navigation Acts in 1752, making the manufacturing of any instrument of war very illegal. Do you suppose we could consider William Hill at one point to be an outlaw? But be that as it may, the things that he constructed here were greatly needed by the people who had moved into this area for 40, 50, 60 miles around. They needed things for the home, for the farm, and as the clouds of war came over the entire colonies, his cannon, his musketry, and even beating the plowshare into the iron sword, which he literally did, was needed tremendously by the people of South Carolina. The stones of this wall on which I'm sitting are part of the foundations of one of the original buildings, and the beautiful modern home in front of us is on the actual foundations of either the furnace or the foundry. This open area was known to all the people of the new acquisition, so it was a logical place for gatherings when William Hill sent word to meet here because the British had a message for all the people of the new acquisition. The years between Yorktown and 1780 were dreadful ones for the Patriot Army, much discouragement, and in 1780, in the spring, William Hill called the men of the area here to talk with an emissary of Lord Rawdon, the British commander of the forces in South Carolina. Under a flag of truce, the emissary said that all of the southern states had been completely neglected forever by the Congress of the new United States, and that George Washington was completely defeated. William Hill had a newspaper which had just come from Virginia, and he said that is a lie. And consequently, the men of the area, with much cheers and laughter, ran off the British. But after Hill, Lacey, Bratton, and others had gone to join the forces under General Sumter, the British came again in June under Christian Hook, and they burned everything for which William Hill had worked They burned the ironworks, his home, the farm, the outbuildings. They stole away the 92 slaves. They left Mrs. Hill without jewelry, with very little to live with, in the only log hut which was standing. When William Hill came back and found the complete desecration of everything for which he had worked, his heart became stronger for the Patriot cause, and he and others harassed the entire Loyalist forces throughout this area. There is a record that in one engagement, when it was necessary to burn a house holding several regiments of dragoons, he ran 4 times over an open space of 100 yards, the distance of a modern football field. At the end of the 4th run, his clothes had been shredded, and even locks of his hair had been clipped from his head by the flying bullets, but he was unscathed. He was wounded in his sword arm at the Battle of Hanging Rock, and the rest of his military engagement had to be spent as a leader and an advisor. Along with Colonel Lacey, he led the Patriot forces toward the defeat of Patrick Ferguson at Kings Mountain, which is 14 miles from here. His leadership was tremendous. Without him giving new heart and guns and ammunition to the Patriot cause, this entire area would have suffered a great deal more than it did. Finally, the war ended. Hill came home, and along with everyone else, there was much rejoicing over the years of peace. That rejoicing is best expressed in a lovely prayer offered by John Moore from Rutherford County. Good Lord, our God that art in heaven, we have great reason to thank thee for the many battles we have won. There is the great and glorious battle of Kings Mountain, where we killed the great General Ferguson and took his whole army, and the great battle at Ramseurs and Williamson's, and the ever memorable and glorious battle of the Cowpens, where we made the proud General Tarleton run down the road helter-skelter. And good Lord, if you had not suffered the cruel Tories to burn Billy Hill's ironworks, we would not have asked any more favors at thy hands. Then came the years of peace. He suffered the loss of his partner, Isaac Hayne, because Hayne was one of the last patriots hanged by the British just before they left Charleston. William Hill then did a most remarkable thing. He completely rebuilt his ironworks, his home, and his farm. He added another furnace to the era and the old furnace which were here on this land. 12 miles away, he built the Etna furnace with all of its accoutrements. He never again was able to achieve the great wealth that he had prior to 1780, but he devoted his remaining years to the budding legislature of what is now the state of South Carolina, and devoted time to his church. He died in 1816 at the age of 79, a very happy man. And now I would like you to go with me to meet Wade Ferry, the director of the York County Historical Commission, in the revolutionary home of William and Martha Bratton at Brattonsville, where we would like to look at artifacts which are similar to those made here at the William Hill Ironworks. Wade, it's very kind of you to gather these metal items for use on the farm and use for the home so that we can see them today. Were these made by William Hill?
Unfortunately not. We don't have any William Hill's items in York County. The ones that have been found so far have been in Charleston, where his partner was working, Isaac Haynes. 2 of the items found were firebacks which were used in the back of the fireplace not only to reflect heat into the room, but also to save the brick in the back of the fireplace from deteriorating. And the other item is the small cannon that they have on exhibit on the Battery in Charleston, which has his foundry mark in it, denoting that he was the one that made it before the American Revolution.
It requires a foundry mark to authenticate the item, is that correct?
That is correct. Right. In other words, he used 3 different marks in his period of iron history in noting items that he made.
Right. Now this would be a sickle for cutting grass, but what on earth is this?
That's an adze, Mary, and this is, of
heavy.
course, yes, it is heavy, and they would, of course, had a handle, probably about a 3-foot handle coming out of it, and it would have been used to smooth up logs when they were making a log house. In other words, they didn't have sawmills, and so they could use an axe and an adze to, which this is called a foot adze, to smooth up the logs with.
I see. Well, are these house building items here?
Yes, they are also house building items. This one was, of course, used for boring holes. It doesn't have an electric drill back in the 18th century, so they had to use manpower, and it works just as well as our electric drills do today. And this is one of my favorite items, the froe. The froe was used to split shingles for these houses. They couldn't just go out and buy shingles, ready-made shingles to put on their home, and so they would find a good source of oak in this area and split out the shingles with the froe. So it's a real useful tool.
This iron appears different. Was this the pig iron or the molten iron right from the furnace?
Okay. No, they would have actually worked this iron. It would have come out of the furnace and probably been made into bar iron. In other words, let it cool, and then later on, a blacksmith or a farmer who had a forge at his own home would take that bar iron and make it into a froe or other implements that he would need. But the cast iron, the items such as the Dutch oven here would have been made out of the cast iron, which would have come directly in the molten form out of the furnace.
Well, the Dutch oven isn't too dissimilar from the ones I cook with today.
No, they're wonderful in 20th century as well as they were 200 years ago.
Right. I read that William Hill had a nail manufactory. These are square nails without the head. This would be terribly necessary on the frontier, would it not?
That's correct, because contrary to popular belief, these old houses do have a large amount of nails in them. They have iron hinges, they had to have the nails for the flooring, they had to have nails for the shingles, and so nails were very important in that period.
And the cooking items here are fascinating. We think barbecuing is one of our 20th century inventions, and
Not
here
at all.
you have the barbecue spit, which can be at various heights. And here we have hangers from a long bar. What was suspended? Things such as this huge pot?
You would use these S-hooks suspended on the pendulum here to adjust the height of your pots over your coals. You don't actually cook on the flames of a fire when you're cooking. You cook on the coals. And so it's very important to be able to adjust your pots and pans.
And the iron skimmer
Right.
would lift up things from the pot. Well, what is this flat item here?
This is an item we found recently. We had been looking for one. This is a griddle for making griddle cakes. They ate lots and lots of griddle cakes at that time, and you could either use this suspended from the S-hooks above the coals, or you could rake the coals right out onto the hearth and set it down on that.
Well, the ladies who did the cooking at that time were extremely strong. I can't lift some of these pots.
Some of them.
Don't you laugh. They were just used to it, I guess.
Some of them are very, very heavy. For instance, the waffle iron here is...
A waffle iron?
Right, the waffle iron.
Oh, just like the ones today.
That's correct. They were a lot of fun to use even in 20th century, but they're very heavy. Most of the school children we have here don't like to imagine even using them.
So you would put the dough or the batter and enclose it and then just very carefully hold it over the flames?
Yeah, just about. You need to heat it up first. Get it good and hot, and then put your dough in there, and you can either not put it back in the coals and let it heat up just like our griddles do today, or waffle irons, or you can put it back into the coals if need be and just scrape off the burnt edges when you get finished. But they're absolutely delicious.
Well, the life 200 years ago, cooking-wise, except for our modern conveniences, was not too different, were they?
No, not at all.
And you have metal items here. Here is a rather roughly made candlestick, a metal container in a bar of wood, and of course your lovely pewter plates, and the lantern, made of iron, so that you could carry it, perforated iron, I noticed.
Correct.
You know, Wade, of all the iron implements we have here today, this piece of ancient iron fascinates me the most. It was found by the people who now own the property where the William Hill Ironworks were. It was found in the water of Allison Creek. And to think that this is part of the old ironworks. It was used for the manufacturing of more iron, and yet the iron itself came from the ore from Nanny's Mountain. I find it just amazing. I believe you told me what part of a machine this would be?
Yes, Mary. This was part of the gear that perhaps ran the bellows at the furnace. And from its shape, we were able to take some measurements and find out that it was probably about 15.5 to 16 feet in circumference. So it was a very large gear that helped run the mill. So it's a wonderful find. We're delighted to have it.
Well, it's amazing to me that here we are among the first people to see this piece of iron after almost 200 years. Very necessary in the growth of the upcountry when we were the frontier. And yet it was all the product of a man, William Hill, with a most remarkable mind, well-educated gentleman able to produce a huge industry working well over 200 people in this part of the country, completely destroyed by the British, and yet he fought through the campaigns to preserve his land and his family, built it all back. Just a most remarkable gentleman.
Very much so.
I find him just amazing. In his memoirs, at the very end, I found a quote that I thought you would like. He wrote this just as he finished his memoirs in 1815. That the present generation may copy after the laudable example of their forefathers, and make use of all the means which God and nature hath given them, and to hold that independence purchased so dearly by their fathers, and have a proper trust in that power who governs the affairs of nations. He was a most remarkable man, this forgotten patriot, Colonel William Hill. Because history is the story of the past, it's composed of stories about people. In the cemetery of the Ebenezer Presbyterian Church in York County, we find a memorial to a beautiful lady because a promise was kept. We are here at the Ebenezer Presbyterian Church, the site of one of the oldest churches in Upper South Carolina. Here, surrounded by a low rock wall, is the churchyard. Many, many people have their final resting place here. I attended a meeting at the church once, and it required 40 minutes to complete the roll call of the veterans within this area, veterans who fought in every war in which our country has been engaged. These were very busy people, and their descendants today are very influential and important members of our community. They were involved in the issues of their lifetime, so it's perfectly all right that one border of the cemetery is a very busy highway. Now, one of the most colorful and interesting people who rest here is Mary America Avery Toland. This is the family plot of the Avery family. Their home stood until a few years ago just several hundred yards east of here. Mary America Avery was born in 1832. She spent her early life here in Ebenezer, as any girl would, and grew to be the most beautiful girl in the state of South Carolina. Now, the most important social event of the year was the state ball held in Columbia at the State House. And when she was 20 years old, she was the belle of the ball, attracted the eye of many a gentleman, and one young doctor, Dr. Hugh or Auger Toland, fell in love with her at first sight. After a whirlwind courtship, she and Dr. Toland were married. Now, in 1852, the idea of go west, young man, was very important to a lot of people, and Dr. Toland had a great desire to see the Pacific coast. Also, Mary America was not a very strong girl, and her mother agreed that maybe a change in climate from the heat and the humidity of South Carolina might improve her health. So shortly after they were married, Mary America and Dr. Toland set forth for California. They had a very well-appointed caravan. Her brother went with them, and among her possessions was a pair of silver-mounted pistols given to her in case she needed them. With every comfort that could be provided, it still took 6 months for the caravan of Conestoga wagons or whatever to make the trip from Ebenezerville to California. Their final destination was near San Francisco. And without their knowing it, this very young town of mud and crudely erected huts, lots of tents, was under an epidemic of cholera. And very shortly after they arrived, Mary America contacted cholera and died. Now, Dr. Tolan was heartbroken. He had her body preserved in a leaden casket. He had to go about his own life, which in its way was very productive. He founded the Tolan School of Medicine in San Francisco. Later, he married a lovely lady who was a writer, and their son became an actor. Now, Dr. Tolan kept the casket with the body of Mary America Avery, some say in his office, but he kept it for 25 years until he felt that it was time to send her back to Ebenezer, because before they had left here on their long journey west, she had promised her mother that if anything happened, she wanted to come back to Ebenezer Presbyterian Church for her final resting place. Now, here the stories vary. One story says that Dr. Tolan had her body placed in 7 coffins, one inside the other. And life having progressed in 25 years, by railroad, the casket, or caskets, was brought back to York, where it was placed upon a wagon, brought to the Ebenezer Cemetery, and there Mary America Avery Tolan was buried in the family plot. You can see her grave marker slightly to the west of the large family marker here in the grove of cedar trees. Mary America lived in the time of the hoop skirt and the very gracious ball gown, swaying as young ladies waltzed with the gentlemen. She must have been a truly beautiful girl, and as such she's been remembered for well over 130 years. Even on her grave marker, we have the note reminding us of her beauty. No one so beautiful as she, fairest of form and face, a queenly mien with modesty, crowned every other grace. A very short life for such a beautiful girl, but she loved her husband very much, enough to go with him across the continent. And one wonders, as you think about the long trip, do you suppose Mary America Avery Tolan ever had to use her silver-mounted pistols?